Station 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
5 minutes after 11 o'clock. I don't know, where am I thinking around? 5 minutes after 11 o'clock. We've heard so much debate about how to extract natural resources from the earth. And we've heard all these stories from North Dakota about how they are just raking in the money by fracking and pushing the natural gas out of the earth by pushing water into it, hot water or some kind of a mixture or something. And hopefully you all know what fracking is. If not, it's gonna be learned right now. It's gonna be taught. but you've heard this before. And in Florida, it's a little bit different, maybe vastly different as far as the earth is concerned. And so we're all very, very protective of our natural water resources, the aquifer that we all drink from. And remember when the Cross Florida Barge Canal was proposed, and then I believe it was during the Nixon administration that Marjorie Harris Carr finally was successful in getting lawmakers to say, you know what, that's not a good idea. You're going to ruin the aquifer. You're going to ruin the water system. Mm-hmm. Well, the same argument is being made now for fracking in Florida. And fracking across the country. I've even read reports, and I don't know what's true. We're going to kind of learn right now. But I've heard reports that some of the earthquake activity in this world, in this nation, are being caused by man-made things like fracking. Don't take my word for that, though. I'm just saying what I read. I'm not telling you anything other than to introduce our guest who can tell you everything. He is Greg Kozera. He's an engineer and an environmentalist with more than 35 years of experience in the natural gas and oil industry. So just those two things, that little fact right there tells you that he knows both sides of this story. He's a professional speaker on leadership and energy, the past president of the Virginia Oil and Gas Association, which is an all-volunteer association. Thank you, Robin, for these notes. And he's written a book called Just the Fracks, Ma'am, The Truth About Hydrofracking and the Next Great American Boom. Greg Kozera, we are all ears on this subject because in Florida, we don't know. We don't know who to listen to and who to believe. Good morning, Greg.
Hey, good morning, Larry. Good to talk to you.
Thank you. Where are you calling from?
I'm in Charleston, West Virginia.
That's a completely different terrain too than North Dakota, right?
I tell you what, I make a point to get to Florida several times during the wintertime for obvious reasons.
Right. So when you come to Florida, I don't know where you stay, but more than likely you're drinking water that came from the aquifer that we have here.
Oh, absolutely. We were matter of fact, we were down there in January. We spent a week down at Marco. Matter of fact, took our first trip to Key West and ate at the cafe that's the furthest, the southernest most.
Oh, don't you love Key West?
Oh, love it. And then we actually went up. We have grandkids that live outside of Orlando, so we spent a long weekend up there. And, of course, we had to do the Disney thing. That's kind of our second home when we're down there. So.
Well, see...
But, it's interesting. We were there last February, and the governor of Florida was at Walt Disney World, and he was talking about 2015. You guys had a record tourist visit year. And, what Disney's doing, I think they got Avatar Land opening up in May. They're working on Star Wars Land. Mm-hmm. Universal's expanding. And, your listeners may not know this, but that's all because of fracking.
Explain how that's because of fracking.
Sure. We see in this country, and really it's true in Russia and most other places, Saudi Arabia and everything. See, fracking is just part of the well process. You drill a well just like you drill a water well, and you case a water. You run pipe in, you cement it, and then, we're deep. The only difference is a water well, you're getting that water from shallow. We're down maybe 8,000 feet, and then you have to shoot holes in that pipe, and then you frack. You actually pump that water and sand and put that small crack in the rock that acts like a superhighway and lets this oil and gas flow out and come to the surface, and then, we use it for heating our homes or for fueling our vehicles, but more importantly, we use it for petrochemicals. And this is the thing where, I'm for the environment, but when people talk about wind and solar replacing natural gas, that's the scariest thing I've ever heard, because you can't make petrochemicals with wind and solar. But the phones we're talking on, everything we're doing, you can't go an hour without touching a petrochemical.
Okay, I love that you said that. And can I just throw something in here? Because I've thought about sort of kind of what you're talking about here. The petrochemicals, that's part of our pharmaceuticals, right? That's part of our plastics.
Absolutely, yes.
Right? Okay. So I've often thought this, that why don't we find alternative energies to fuel our cars, and that way the petrochemicals can be preserved for pharmaceuticals, for tires, for plastics. Does that make sense?
It does, and we're, as a matter of fact, of course, you understand, that's the other thing that people talk about, electric cars, and even an electric car can't exist without petrochemicals, because the electricity's got to come from somewhere. And right now, we're using, I think right now, natural gas is the largest source of electricity in this country. It's like 35%. Coal's next, and then nuclear, and then wind and solar down there around 2 or 3%. So most of even the electricity we get for electric cars comes from natural gas, but the petrochemicals that we need to make those cars and to make windmills and solar panels are all from oil and gas wells that have all been fracked. In this country, we frack virtually every well. So when someone says we're going to, just like the last presidential race, when someone says we're going to ban fracking or we're going to restrict it, what they've just told your listeners is, I want you to pay $5 for gasoline, and we're going to rely on our friends in Russia and Iran and other places for our petrochemicals.
Okay, but
that's scary.
I know it is, but does the environmentalist in you say, I'd rather pay $5 for a gallon of gas than to have this beautiful river that runs through Marion County become a sewer?
Well, and what's interesting, and I've made this statement multiple times, and I can back it up, but do you realize that the natural gas industry in the last 8 years has done more to help the planet than anybody? I mean, you can look at the environmental groups, even look at the EPA. I mean, they had that spill in Colorado that they got heavy metals in the Colorado River now, thanks to the EPA. I mean, that's the kind of help we're getting. But here's what's happening. This whole fracking thing didn't start. I mean, can you recall the incident that caused this whole fracking controversy? You probably can't, because there wasn't.
No.
There wasn't one. It wasn't like there was this big spill in the Gulf area, or we had something, a ship that did something. I mean, it started for years. We've been fracking wells since 1947. We fracked over 2 million wells. Think about that. We've done something 2 million times, and the anti-frack group is looking for that one well where there's been contamination.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, think about that. Now, remember, fracking is what happens deep underground. The biggest danger, because I know I'm worried about my water. I got to drink it. But do you know the biggest danger to your water has nothing to do with oil and gas drilling? I'm worried about my neighbor, because thing is, your water wells in Florida, the biggest danger to that aquifer is the water wells everybody's got in there, because I don't know what your regs are, but my guess is you don't have to go to the state and get a permit to drill a water well. You don't have to. You probably have to case it, but do they have to cement it? Do they have to test it? They don't have to do anything. So that water well could be, for all I know, it could be next to the guy's septic. It could be next to his pig pen, like the Amish do up here in Ohio and Pennsylvania, because I got a guy is in an ag engineer, and he says, Greg, the Amish put their water wells next to the pig pen so they don't have to haul the water. Now think about that. You got this water well next to a pig pen that doesn't have any cement like a gas well.
I got you. Yeah.
So where does that stuff go?
Okay, if I was to ask about fracking in North Dakota, the questions might be different than Florida. Am I right about that, or am I wrong about that? Am I right that Florida?
Fracking is the same everywhere.
Okay, but is because Florida is a sandy peninsula? Are we more fragile than a rocky terrain like where you are? You've got a lot of stone right there.
Well, remember. Fracking, I mean, and this is the real important thing, because even the EPA folks, I had explained this to them when I was in Washington last summer. people think drilling is fracking. Two different processes. You drill first. And when you drill, you do have to go through that sandy area, those aquifers. But that's no different than the water wells people are drilling. So the challenge, the only difference between Florida and North Dakota or even West Virginia is you may have some sandy, you've got some shallow aquifers that have to be drilled through and cased off. But how they drill through those things, I would assume they do the same thing in Florida that we do up here. We drill on air. So in other words, you're putting air in the ground and you're drilling that hole. And then as soon as you get that hole drilled, then you run cement and you cement it. You cement, you run pipe and cement that thing. So that protects the groundwater. After that, even in Florida, once you get below a certain, you get that sand shallow, but you're in rock. I mean, your rock isn't rock is still rock. It may be a little different type of reservoir, but you've still got rock in Florida like we do in North Dakota or like we do in West Virginia or Texas for all that matters. The only difference is shallow. And that's where, good regulations and, oil and gas is the same as any other industry. You don't want to spill anything on the surface. You want to be... But
right, okay. So
that's not a big deal.
And the way I understand it is we do not frack in Florida yet. We have not done this yet. Am I right?
If you've drilled a well and if it's productive, someone's probably fracked it. I mean, it's so basic to the process.
Okay,
it's like putting tires on your car. We don't have, you may have some real prolific wells, but you got to put that crack in the ground to allow that oil and gas to escape. If you can't frack, you can't drill. It's just that basic.
Okay. So maybe I misunderstood what the term even means.
Right. Now, you're not alone. I mean, if the EPA can't figure it out, we have to explain it to them. God bless them.
Okay. So let me ask it this way then. The process of injecting water and sand in order to push out natural gas, that's different than drilling for water for my well so that I can have a bathtub, right?
Well, to a point. The actual process to actually crack that rock deep underground. Remember, the reservoir, this oil and gas is actually in the rock pores itself. I mean, if you had a piece of sandstone, you would it's actually in the pores of that rock. So that's what's different. You actually have to crack that. Now, the rock and all that amounts to pumping a water. Or sometimes we just put nitrogen gas down there, and you create that little crack in the rock that allows the oil and gas to come out. But the drilling process is the same for a water well or a gas well. The only difference is they use a lot of water to drill with in a water well. We'll use a lot of air when we're drilling a gas well. So, actually, you probably have more contamination when you're drilling a dang water well for that matter. But the process, drilling is still drilling. Now, the hole is bigger because you're going to go deeper, so, we'll drill a much bigger hole. But, the process is still the same for the drilling side. Now, the difference is the water well, normally you don't frack, although some people, believe it or not, actually frack a water well if they have to.
Okay.
And they'll pump water.
Okay. I have sort of a political question to ask you. In the speech that President Trump made the other day, he said something about stopping the lobbyists from having the power that they have. If I'm elected into an office and I'm representing people, I really do need people who are more educated on things like fracking than I am. So I need some intelligent input so that I can make a proper decision. Does that decision to stop lobbyists prevent you from going to Congress, or you know what I mean, and educating them so that they can make a better decision?
And you're right. Those, whether you're in Congress or even at the state legislature, you need people to educate you. Now, from a lobbying standpoint, and I've done a lot of work even at the legislative, level, and even with my own senators and congressmen, and I'm not a lobbyist. I'm not a registered lobbyist. All I do is try to educate them. I just say, hey, here's the process. Here's what it is. Here's what it does from a technical standpoint. So I guess there's maybe two ways of looking at it. There's that educational process, and then there's those people that actually go in and lobby for a particular law. I guess maybe that's
right. Yeah, but I was mostly referring to your area of expertise. Because
they need that. You're right. They need them because they have no clue, and it's not just this. I mean, you
right.
look at any other technical subject. They've got to have people that they can't know everything. So you're right. They need to have that educational aspect.
Okay, so I just want to pretend just for a second to make. I hope this makes a point. Okay, I'm a legislator, and you're my information guy. Whether we call you a lobbyist or not, that doesn't matter. Okay, I just want to know from you. Let's say I'm a state legislator in Florida, and I have to make a decision about fracking, and I go to you, and I say, do we have any examples in this country of fracking that has contaminated any water? So that would be question number one. Do we have any?
No, zero, nada.
Nothing. Okay. Do the rules that
and there's reasons. I mean, and there's technical reasons why that happens. It's not because we've been lucky or we've been that good. Mother Nature actually helps us, believe it or not. But no, with 2 million wells, we still haven't contaminated one. Isn't that amazing?
And how about the change in the terrain? Is there any change in the terrain where it sort of doesn't have that lush green look anymore, that it's all rocky and bouldery and people will move out of that area?
Oh, Robin, that's a great question. Actually, just the opposite. Where I live, I mean, this is so cool. I live right between, I'm in the middle of a gas field, and I've got wells all around me. And they're on my street. I mean, literally. And I was here when they fracked them. I watched them do the frack job. Guess where the deer eat? They eat those well sites because they're grass. I mean, if they're not eating the well site, they're coming to my yard and eating my tomatoes. I mean, that's the other part when I talk about, people talk about renewables, and they said I'm not going to slam renewables because there's a place for that. There's a niche for them. But the well on my street that I can see when I look out my window, I know how much gas that well makes because I know the people that have it. That well is on an acre of ground. It's green. The deer eat there. My dog she's 13 years old. She's been playing with her dog friend down there since she's been a puppy. So she's obviously not harmed by it. Mm-hmm. But think about that. On that 1 acre, we got grass. To replace that well with windmills or solar panels, either one, would require 1,000 acres plus of windmills or solar panels to replace the energy that comes out of that one well. Now, there's one major difference, is the solar panels only work when the sun's out, and that's only about half the time because we have night half the time. That well will give me light and heat because the gas makes electricity, but that's going to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year round, where that windmill, when it's in the wintertime, when it's freezing up here, I don't know, when it's 10 degrees and it's cold, I got light, I got heat thanks to wells like that.
Greg,
if I was depending on windmills or solar, it'd be cold and be dark.
Greg Kozera is our guest. He has written the book called Just the Fracks, Ma'am, The Truth About Hydrofracking and the Next Great American Boom. We do have the phone lines open, and I have a phone call on hold, so let me take that call before we do the break, and when we come back, we should have enough time to kind of recap and give information so we can get the book. Thank you for calling. Good morning. You're on the air with Greg Kozera.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. With all the extreme fracking going on in the Middle West, they claim it's been causing a lot of earthquake problems. What is your thought on that?
Hey, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that, sir. And there's actually been a study going on right now. 3 universities, West Virginia University, University of Kansas, and OU, Oklahoma University, are studying that. And, matter of fact, I happened to be at a dinner, and the guy, he's a water resources person from West Virginia University, and I was just asking what he was doing. I didn't know he was part of the study. He said, oh, yeah, we've been studying that. And I said, well, can you tell me what's causing this, Paul? And he said, well, Greg, we don't know that for sure, but it's not fracking, because he said we frack at about 8,000 feet out there. These earthquakes are focused at about 20,000 plus. It's where what they call basement, right where the granite is. So they know where the earthquakes are coming from. They know where we're fracking. The two are thousands and thousands of feet apart. So no, is it fracking? Absolutely not.
Wow. I half of it I wondered if maybe our seismographs, am I saying it right, are more sensitive now than they were at one time. Is that possible?
I think that's part of, oh, yeah, it is, because they'll pick up, it's amazing what they'll pick up. And they actually did a study in Virginia in the 1990s where on shallow, I mean, these are deep wells in Oklahoma, and they did shallow wells in Virginia and didn't see anything at all. So that's important for folks to know. We worry about that stuff, but the reality is, no, it's not. And I had an earthquake guy tell me, he said, look, you can't explain something as powerful as an earthquake by something small and local like a frack. So that may help a lot. And now the other thing I probably should explain, because it is important, because I didn't realize that people didn't understand that our natural gas and oil is actually in the pores of a rock. It's not a cave, it's a rock. So when that gas and oil come out of there, the rock is still behind. So I've had people ask me, well, what about subsidence? When you suck all that gas out from under my house, is it going to collapse? No, because it's kind of like on the beach. The water can flow out of that sand, but the beach is still there. So that's the same thing. When we take all that oil and gas out of the rock, the rock's still there. Nothing's going to subside. We're all good.
All right, real quickly, if you could just, maybe this is oil drilling 101, a real basic question. What with the old drills that we used to see, like in Texas, like in the Beverly Hillbillies days?
Yeah.
How did that oil get extracted from the ground? What was the difference?
In those early days, we had some very prolific, and that's even been the case in the Middle East, where they've got some really porous rock, and then that oil and gas is in there under pressure, so they would see those gushers. That stuff would the gas itself would want to get out of that I'll call it reservoir, and it would flow to the surface, but. We don't have those anymore. And, the rock we're working on now, and even that Russia uses for a lot of their oil and gas fields, is pretty tight rock. So, I mean, it's kind of like if you picked up a stone that was a sandstone, it's hard to imagine that oil and gas is right in the pores of that thing. So that may help a lot. And let's face it, that's why you're getting all the tourism, because of this oil we're producing in the Dakotas and Texas and in the Northeast. We're the number 3 oil producer in the world. Russia's 1, Saudi's 2, we're 3. It's because of all our oil that we've driven that price down. If we would ever go away, if we would go back to the olden days of 2005, where we couldn't produce much oil, watch how quickly oil prices zoom over $100 a barrel.
Really.
Imagine what that would mean for Vladimir Putin. He's making $50 a barrel. That's why I can't understand why they were talking about, if he's going to rig the election, his worst nightmare, folks, is to have Donald Trump as president, because Trump wants to promote U.S. drilling. If Hillary would have got in and would have banned fracking or regulated it, watch how quickly natural gas or gasoline would have, oil would have $100 a barrel. Putin would have been, he'd have been up. I mean, his revenues from oil would have doubled under Hillary.
I think when you look at the newspapers and the news programs, I think you get the feeling that all of America thinks the way the news is written, and I think most of America is like Robin and I. I think we just want to know. We are willing to admit that we don't know. And we're also smart enough to know that the guy at the news desk is probably no smarter than us. And I think you're
right. I know you're right.
And I really want to know from people who know. I mean, as an engineer and an environmentalist, I am taking real careful note of what you're saying here. The book is called Just the Fracks, ma'am. I don't think one was sent to us.
No, it's en route.
Oh, it's en route.
We'll be getting it shortly.
How do we get the book?
You can go to all online, but you can go to my website, gregkozera.com, and you can click on. You can buy it right off my website. If they're part of like an Amazon or something like that, you can get it that way. But it's easy to get. It's a small book. It's easy to read. It's got pictures and diagrams. And let's face it, I wouldn't live where I do. My kids are grown up, and we've been going to Disney since 1982. I wouldn't live here if fracking was dangerous. I mean, I just wouldn't. I mean, it wouldn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, and I think our opportunity to change the world, because, folks, we're bringing manufacturing back to this country. The petrochemical industry is coming back to this country because of our cheap, not just natural gas, but the feedstocks that we're using for petrochemicals.
Right.
And think about that. Every time a factory locates here, and I'm working with a group, your listeners can check this out. Go to shellcrescentusa.com, shellcrescentusa.com. Check out that website. It's a group of business people and community leaders that are not oil and gas people at all. They just want to see industry come back, and that's how we're doing it. We're going to bring industry and jobs back, and that's good for the whole country. As long as gasoline stays cheap, people are going to still. That's the real. Couldn't believe how many friends are going to Florida to see Disney. It's cheap gas.
If you're ever in Florida, we'd love to have you in the studio. I just went to your website, GregKozera.com. You're a leadership expert. Okay, thank you for being on the show with us. You've helped us out a lot, but I think the book is going to be the more the complete way. Just the Fracks, ma'am. Thank you so much, Greg. We'll take a break. This is WOCA.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. An arrest as probes continue into a string of anti-Semitic threats and vandalism around the country, like the Mid-Island YJCC, where there was a candlelight vigil last night.
There's no place for